On February 2nd, the dragon looked up. At dusk, in a secluded place in the town called Mud Bottle Lane, there was a lonely and thin young man. At this time, according to the custom, he was holding a candle and a peach branch to shine on the beams, walls, and wooden beds, knocking and beating with the peach branch, trying to drive away snakes, scorpions, and centipedes. His mouth was full of words. It was an old saying passed down from generation to generation in the town. On February 2nd, the candle shines on the beam. If peaches hit the wall, snakes and insects on earth have nowhere to hide. The young man's surname is Chen, and his name is Ping-an. His parents died early. The porcelain in the town is very famous. Since the founding of this dynasty, it has taken on the important task of supervising the burning of tombs and sacrificial vessels under the imperial edicts. Imperial court officials are stationed here all year round to supervise the affairs of official kings. A helpless young man, he became a porcelain craftsman very early. At first, he could only do some chores. He worked hard with a halfway master with a bad temper for several years. He just figured out a way to burn porcelain. As a result, things changed. The town suddenly lost the amulet made by the official kill. Dozens of kings around the town looked like Walong kings. All of them were ordered to shut down overnight. Chen Ping-an put down the newly folded peach branch, blew out the candle, walked out of the house, sat on the steps, and looked up at the bright starry sky. The boy still clearly remembers that the teacher Fu, surnamed Yao, who only recognized himself as half an apprentice, was found sitting on a small bamboo chair facing the kill head in the early morning of late autumn last year. However, there are a few people like Old Man Yao, for generations, craftsmen in small towns who can only burn porcelain have dared not overstep the official kings for firing tribute goods, nor sell the stored porcelain to the people without permission. They have to find another way out. Chen Ping-an, 14, has also been swept out. After returning to the Mud Bottle Lane, he continues to guard the dilapidated old house. It is almost a gloomy saying that Chen Ping-an wants to be a defeated family. There's no way to start that after being a wandering ghost for some time. The boy really couldn't find a living to earn money. Relying on his meager savings, the boy barely filled his stomach. A few days ago, I heard that a foreign blacksmith surnamed Ruin came to Kilong Lane a few blocks away. He announced that he would accept 7 or 8 blacksmith apprentices and didn't give him wages, but in charge of food. Chen Ping-an hurried to take a chance. I never thought that the middle-aged man just glanced at him and turned him out. At that time, Chen Ping-an wondered whether the work of forging iron depended not on the strength of his arms, but on his face. You should know that although Chen Ping-an looks weak, his strength cannot be underestimated. This is the physical foundation of young people who have been trained by firing porcelain and drawing blanks in those years. In addition, Chen Ping-an also followed the old man's surname Yao, ran all over the mountains and rivers within 100 miles of the town, tasted the flavor of all kinds of soil around, worked hard, and was willing to do any dirty and tiring work. It's a pity that Lao Yao doesn't like Chen Ping-an all the time. He dislikes that young people don't have savvy and are not enlightened. He is far inferior to his apprentice Liu Xianxia. No wonder the old man is eccentric. His master leads him into the door and practices himself. For example, it's the same boring blank drawing. Liu Xianxia's skill in just half a year is equal to the level of Chen Ping-an's hard work for 3 years. Although he may not need this skill in his life, Chen Ping-an still closed his eyes as before. Imagine that there were blue stone slabs and wheel cars in front of him, and began to practice blank drawing. That practice makes perfect. Every quarter of an hour or so, the boy would rest for a while, shake his wrists, and repeat this cycle until the whole person was completely exhausted. Chen Ping-an got up and slowly stretched out while walking in the hospital. No one has ever told Chen Ping-an this. It's his own way of thinking. There was silence between heaven and earth. Chen Ping-an heard a harsh, sarcastic laugh and stopped. Sure enough, he saw the peer squatting on the wall, grinning, and made no secret of his disdain. This person is an old neighbor of Chen Ping-an. It is said that he is the illegitimate son of the former supervisor. The adult is afraid of being criticized by the public and impeachment by the officials. Finally, He returns to the capital alone to report on his work and hand over the child to the successor official, who has a lot of personal friendship to help take care of him. Now the town has inexplicably lost its official kill firing qualification. The supervisor in charge of supervising kill affairs for the imperial court is unable to protect himself when he crosses the river. He can't care for the illegitimate children of his official colleagues. He left some money and hurried to the capital to make a relationship. Unknowingly, the young neighbor, who has become an abandoned son, still has a good life. He takes his personal servant girl around the town all day. He is idle all year round and never worries about silver. The walls of the lowest courtyard of every family in the Mud Bottle Lane are very low. In fact, the neighbor teenagers don't have to stand on tiptoe to see the scene of the courtyard here. But every time they talk to Chen Ping'an, they like to squat on the wall. Compared with the vulgarity of Chen Ping'an's name, the neighbor's youth should be much more elegant, though it is called Song Jixen. Even the maid who depends on him also has a literary title, Ji Gui. The girl was standing on the other side of the courtyard wall. She had apricot eyes and was timid and weak. There was a voice over the gate. "Do you sell your handmaid?" Song Jixen was stunned. Following his voice, he turned and looked. He was a young man in royal clothes with smiling eyebrows, standing outside the hospital. He had a completely strange face. Beside the young man in royal clothes stood a tall old man with white face and kind face. He squinted gently at the two young girls adjacent to the courtyard. The old man sideswiped by Chen Ping'an and did not stop. But there were many stops on Song Jixen and his maidservant, and his smile gradually became strong. Song Jixen squinted and said, "Sell. Why not sell?" The boy smiled and said, "Then tell me the price." The girl stared with unimaginable eyes. Like a panicked young elk, Song Jixen turned his eyes, stretched out a finger and shook. 10,000 liang of silver. The young man in royal clothes looked as usual, nodded and said, "Okay." Seeing that the boy didn't look like a joke, Song Jixen quickly changed his mouth and said, "It's 10,000 liang of gold." The young man in royal clothes turned up his mouth and said, "I'm teasing you." Song Jixen's face was gloomy. The young man in royal clothes ignored Song Jixen and looked away at Chen Ping'an. "Today, thanks to you, I can buy that carp. When I bought it back, I was more and more happy. I thought I must thank you face to face. So I asked Grandpa Wu to take me to you all night." He threw out a heavy embroidered bag and drew it to Chen Ping'an. With a bright smile, he said, "This is a reward. You and I are even cleared." Chen Ping'an just wanted to speak. The young man in royal clothes had turned and left. Chen Ping'an frowned. "During the day, I accidentally saw a middle-aged man walking down the street with a fish basket and caught a golden carp with a long tail. It jumped violently in the bamboo basket, though Chen Ping'an only glanced at it and felt very happy that. So he asked if he could buy for 10 yuan. The middle-aged man just wanted to reward his 5-sang temple, which was profitable. So he sat down and began to pay. The lion opened his mouth and refused to sell for 30 yuan. The cash-strapped Chen Ping'an didn't have so much spare money, and he really didn't want to give up the golden carp. He greedily followed the middle-aged man and tried to cut the price to 15 yuan, even 20 yuan. Just when the middle-aged man showed signs of letting go, the young man in royal clothes and the tall old man happened to pass by. Without saying a word, they bought the carp and fish basket with 50 yuan. Chen Ping'an can only watch them fly away, helpless, staring at the farther and farther back of the couple. Song Jixen took back his vicious eyes, jumped off the wall, seemed to remember something, and said to Chen Ping'an, "Do you still remember the forfeit in the first month?" Chen Ping'an nodded. "Why don't you remember? It's still fresh in my memory." According to the customs inherited by this town for hundreds of years, if there are snakes drilling into their own house, it is a good sign. The owner will never expel them and kill them. On the first day of the first lunar month, Song Jixen sat on the threshold to bask in the sun, and then a gadget commonly known as a quadruped rushed into the house under his eyes. Song Jixen grabbed it and drew it out of the yard. He didn't think that the quadruped snake, which had fallen 7 meat and 8 vegetables, became more and more brave. Time and again, Song Jixen, who never believed in ghosts and gods, was angry. In a rage, he threw it into Chen Ping'an's yard. Unexpectedly, Song Jigsan saw the crouching quadruped under his bed the next day. Song Jigsan noticed that the girl pulled her sleeve. The young man had a good connection with her. Subconsciously, he swallowed the words that had come to his mouth back to his stomach. What he wants to say is that the ugly quadruped snake has a bulge on its forehead recently, like a horn on its head. Song Jigsan changed his words and said, Ji Guoyi and I may live here next month. Chen Ping'an sighed. Be careful on the road. Song Jigsan half true and half false said, I'm sure I can move some things. Don't steal things recklessly when there's no one in my house. Chen Ping'an shook his head. Song Jigsan suddenly left, pointed at Chen Ping'an with his finger, and said with a smile, timid as a mouse. No wonder there are no noble children in the poor family. Don't say that they are poor and cheap in this life and can be bullied by others. Maybe they can't escape in the next life. Chen Ping'an remained silent. When they returned to the house, Chen Ping'an closed the door and lay on the hard wooden bed. The poor boy closed his eyes and whispered, broken flat, safe here, safe here, safe here. It was a little bright before the chicken crowed. Chen Ping'an got up. The thin bedding really couldn't keep the heat. Moreover, when Chen Ping'an was a porcelain apprentice, he also formed the habit of getting up early and going to bed late. Chen Ping'an opened the door and came to the sofa mud yard. After taking a deep breath, she stretched out and walked out of the yard. She turned around and saw a thin figure, bent over, holding a bucket of water in both hands, pushing open the door of her yard with her shoulder. It was Song Jigsan's maid. She should have just fetched water from the iron log well on the other side of Xianxia Lane. Chen Ping'an took back her sight, walked through the streets and lanes, and ran all the way to the east of the town. The Mud Bottle Lane was in the west of the town and the easternmost gate. A person was responsible for the business travel in and out of the town and the night band patrol. Usually, she also collected and handed over some family letters sent back from outside. What Chen Ping'an had to do next was to give those letters to the people of the town. The reward was a letter and a copper coin. This is the way he managed to earn money. Chen Ping'an has made an appointment with the other side. After a long look-up in February, he began to take over the business. In Song Jigsan's words, he was born poor and miserable. Even if he was lucky to enter the house, Chen Ping'an couldn't hold it. Song Jigsan often says some obscure words, which are probably moved from books. Chen Ping'an always doesn't understand them. For example, Chen Ping'an didn't understand when he talked about the unexpected cold in spring 2 days ago. As for the fact that he survived the winter every year, it was colder for a period of time after spring. The youth had a personal experience. Song Jigsan said that it was cold pouring cold in spring. It's as powerful as the rifle on the battlefield. So many people will die in these ghost gates. The town is not surrounded by walls. After all, there are few thieves and bandits. So it is nominally a city gate. In fact, it is a row of dilapidated old fences. There is a place for pedestrians and vehicles to pass through, even if it is the face of the town. When Chen Ping'an trotted past Xianxia Lane, he saw many women and children gathered by the iron log well, and the wheels of the well were creaking all the time. Another round the street, Chen Ping'an heard a familiar sound of reading not far away. There was a rural school, which was jointly funded by several large families in the town. The teacher was a foreigner. When Chen Ping'an was a child, he often ran to hide outside the window, squatted secretly, and pricked his ears. Although the gentleman was very strict when teaching, he did not scold and stop Chen Ping'an's children who rubbed their books and learned. Later, Chen Ping'an went to a dragon kill outside the town as an apprentice, and never went to a school again. Further on, Chen Ping'an passed the stone memorial archway. Because there are 12 stone columns built in the memorial archway, the local people like to call it Crab Memorial Archway. The real name of this memorial archway is very different from that of Liu Xianxia. Song Jigsan vowed to call it University Memorial Archway in an old book called Local County Chronicles, which is the imperial memorial archway of the emperor's master, in order to commemorate the civil, political, and martial arts of a senior official in history, Liu Xianxia. A local steam-stuffed bun like Chen Ping'an said that this is the crab workshop that we have been shouting for hundreds of years. There is no reason to call it a college scholar workshop. Yu Xiaoyan also asked Song Jixin a question. How big is the official head of the bachelor? Is it bigger than the wellhead of the iron log well? Which made Song Jixin blush. At this time, Chen Ping'an ran around the 12th for Memorial Archway. There were 4 big characters on each side. The fun was strange and different. They were not given to benevolence. Hope to speak naturally. Don't ask outside and fight a bull in anger. According to Song Jixin, except for certain 4 words, the other 3 stone inscriptions on the plaque have been smeared and tampered with. Chen Ping'an was ignorant of these and never thought deeply. Of course, even if a teenager wanted to find out, it was futile. He didn't even know what the local county chronicles that Song Jixin often talked about were. Not far beyond the Memorial Archway, I soon saw an old locust tree with luxuriant branches. Under the tree, there was a trunk that I didn't know who moved here. After a little chopping, there were 2 green stone slabs under the ends. The tree was used as a simple bench. Every summer, the people of the town like to enjoy the cool here. The rich families and elders will also take a basket of iced melons and fruits from the well. When the children have enough to eat and drink, they will form gangs and play in the shade of the tree. Chen Ping'an was used to going up the mountain and into the water. He ran near the gate of the fence and stopped at the door of the lonely yellow mud house. His heart was not beating and he was out of breath. There are not many outsiders in the town that it is reasonable to say that now the money tree burned and the official queue has fallen down, so there will be no new faces. When old man Yao was alive, he once drank too much. He told his disciples Chen Ping'an and Liu Xiaoyan that what we do is the only official queue business in the world. It is imperial porcelain for His Majesty and Empress. Even if other people have more money, even if they are big officials and dare to touch it, they will be beheaded. Old man Yao's spirit was very different that day. Today, Chen Ping'an looked outside the fence and found many people waiting to open the gate. There were no fewer than 7 or 8 people. Men, women, old and young, and they are strangers. The local people in and out of the town rarely go to the east gate, whether to burn porcelain or to farm work. The reason is very simple. The road in the east gate of the town extends out, and there are no dragon kings and fields. At this time, Chen Ping'an and those foreigners looked at each other through a wooden fence. At that moment, the youths wearing self-made straw sandals just envied the thick clothes on those people. They must be warm and can suffer from the cold. The people outside the door were obviously divided into several groups. They were not a group, but they all looked at the thin teenagers inside the door. Most of them looked indifferent, but occasionally, there were 1 or 2 people. Their eyes had already crossed the figure of the teenagers and looked farther away from the town. Chen Ping'an is a little strange. Don't these people know that the imperial court has banned all dragon kings? Or do they think they have an opportunity because they know the truth? There was a young man with a strange high crown. He was tall and slender. There was a green jade pendant hanging around his waist. He seemed impatient. When he walked out of the crowd alone, he wanted to push open the unlocked fence door down just when his fingers were about to touch the wooden door. He suddenly stopped and slowly retracted his hands. After his hands were negative, he smiled and looked at the straw sandal boy in the door without talking. Just laugh. From the corner of Chen Ping'an's eye, he inadvertently found that the people behind the young people seemed to be disappointed, pondered, frowned and ridiculed. Their emotions were subtle and different. Just then, a middle-aged man with messy hair suddenly opened the door and scolded Chen Ping'an. Son of a bitch. Have you lost your eyes for money? You've come to call for life so early. You're in a hurry to see your dead parents. Chen Ping'an turned his eyes. The teenager didn't care about these sour words. First, he lived in a rural place where there were few books that if he was scolded, he would be angry. He might as well find a water well to jump down, which would save him worry and trouble. Second, the middle-aged single doorman is often teased by the people of the town, especially those bold and aggressive women. Don't say scolding him, but many beat him down in addition. This man also likes to brag with children in open crotch pants. For example, I had a good fight at the gate of the city. 5 or 6 big men were looking for teeth and blood everywhere. The whole 2-foot wide road in front of the gate is almost like a muddy road in rainy days. He was angry with Chen Ping'an and said, "You'll talk about that crap later. No one in town takes this guy seriously. But whether foreigners can enter the town or not, men hold the power of life and death." He reached for his crutch as he walked to the wooden fence door. The man with his back to Chen Ping'an opened the door, collected a small embroidered bag from time to time, put it into his cuffs, and then let it go one by one. Chen Ping'an made way very early. The 8 people were roughly divided into 5 groups and went to the town. In addition to the young man wearing a high crown and a green pendant around his waist, he also passed to 7 or 8-year-old children. The boy was wearing a festive red robe, and the girl was pink and tender. Like good porcelain, the boy was half a head shorter than Chen Ping'an. When the child passed him, he opened his mouth. Although there was no sound, he had an obvious mouth shape. He should have said 2 words, full of provocation. The middle-aged woman holding the boy coughed gently, and the child restrained a little. The little girl behind the woman and the boy was led by a tall old man covered with frost and snow. She turned her head and said a big crosstalk to Chen Ping'an, and didn't forget to point out to the boy of her age in front of her dog. Chen Ping'an didn't understand what the girl was talking about, but I guess she was complaining. The burly old man glanced at the straw sandal boy, just being looked at intentionally or unintentionally. Chen Ping'an took a step back purely subconsciously. I must see the cut. Seeing this behind the scenes, the little girl who used to chatter like a little yellow finch suddenly lost her interest in fanning the flames. She turned her head and stopped looking at Chen Ping'an, though it seemed that another look would dirty her eyes. Young Chen Ping'an has never seen the world, but it doesn't mean he can understand his face. When the pedestrian left, the doorman smiled and asked, "Do you want to know what they said?" Chen Ping'an nodded and said, "Yes." The middle-aged bachelor was happy and said with a smile, "It's all good to praise you for your good looks." Chen Ping'an pulled the corners of his mouth and thought to himself, "Do you think I'm stupid?" The man saw through the boy's mind and smiled more happily. "If you're not stupid, can I let you deliver the letter?" Chen Ping'an didn't dare to refuse, for fear that he would annoy this guy and the copper money he was about to get would fly away. The man turned his head, looked at the people, reached out his hand and rubbed his broken chin. He whispered, "That woman's legs can pinch dead people just now." Chen Ping'an hesitated and asked curiously, "Has that lady practiced martial arts?" The man was stunned, looked down at the boy and said solemnly, "You boy are really stupid." The boy was confused. He asked Chen Ping'an to wait. He strolled to the house. When he came back, he had a pile of envelopes in his hand, not thick or thin, about 10 copies. After the man handed them to Chen Ping'an, he asked, "Fools have silly blessings, and good people have good returns. Do you believe it?" Chen Ping'an took the letter in one hand, spread out his palm in the other hand and blinked. "It's agreed that a letter will cost a penny." The man became angry. He slapped the 5 copper coins prepared in advance in the palm of the boy's hand. With a big hand, he said with pride, "I owe you 5 when first." The town is not big or small, with more than 600 families and the gateway of the poor people in the town. Chen Ping'an knows most of them. As for the rich families with rich family background, the threshold is high, and mud-legged teenagers can step in. Chen Ping'an hasn't even set foot in the spacious alleys where large families gather. The streets over there are paved with large blue stone slabs. On rainy days, never step on it and splash mud. Shredding come after thousands of years of trampling and rolling by people, horses, and vehicles. Those excellent blue stone slabs have been rubbed as smooth as a mirror. Li, Zhang, and Song are the 4 surnames. They are the big surnames here in the town. The township school is the money of these families. Most of them have 2 or 3 big dragon kings outside the city. The official residence of successive kill supervisors is on the same street as these families. Unfortunately, almost all of the 10 letters Chen Ping'an wants to send today are well-known wealthy families in the town, which is also very reasonable. The dragon begets the dragon, the phoenix begets the phoenix, and the mouse begets the child to make a hole in the ground. The distant wanderers who can send letters home must have a good family background, otherwise they don't have the confidence to go out for a long trip. Among the 9 letters, Chen Ping'an actually went to 2 places, Fulu Street and Tawai Lane. When he stepped on the blue stone board as big as a bed for the first time, the boy was a little nervous and slowed down. He was even ashamed of himself. He couldn't help feeling that his straw sandals were dirty on the street. The first letter sent by Chen Ping'an was the Lu family, whose ancestors had received a piece of jade from the emperor. When the boy stood at the door, he became more and more embarrassed. Rich people pay attention to many things. The Lu family's house is big. There are 2 stone lions at the door. They are tall and powerful. Song Jixen said that this thing can avoid evil and suppress evil. Chen Ping'an doesn't know what evil is at all. He's just curious that the high lion's mouth still seems to contain a round stone ball. How can this be carved? Chen Ping'an resisted the impulse to touch the stone ball, walked up the steps and rang the head of the bronze lion. Soon a young man opened the door and walked out. As soon as he heard that he was coming to deliver the letter, the man had no expression. He twisted a corner of the envelope with his fingers. After receiving the letter from his family, he turned and walked quickly into the house and closed the door pasted with a painted statue of the god of wealth. Later, the young man's mail delivery process was also so ordinary. There was a family with an unknown reputation at the corner of Tawai Lane. The door was opened by a kind-hearted little old man. After receiving the letter, he smiled and said, "Young man, it's hard. Do you want to come in and have a rest and have a drink of hot water?" The boy smiled shyly, shook his head and ran away. The old man gently put the letter on his sleeve, didn't hurry back to the house, looked up into the distance, and his sight was turbid. The last sight, from high to low, from far to near, stared at the peach trees on both sides of the street. It looked like an old man, which squeezed out a smile. The old man turned and left. Before long, a little yellow finch with lovely color stopped at the branch of the peach tree, pecked its beak tender and hissed gently. In the last letter, Chen Ping'an needs to send it to the teacher of the rural school. During the period, he passes by a fortune-telling stall. He is a young Taoist in an old Taoist robe. He sits behind the table with a straight waist. He wears a high crown like a blooming lotus. When the young Taoist saw the young man running by quickly, he quickly greeted him and said, "Young man, don't miss passing by. Come and draw a lot. I can help you calculate a divination, which can help you predict good and bad luck." Chen Ping'an didn't stop, but turned his head and waved his hand. The Taoist didn't give up. He leaned forward and raised his voice. "Young man, I used to charge 10 yuan for signing for others. Today, I'll make an exception and only charge you 3 yuan. Of course, if you draw out 1 to sign, you might as well add 1 more when she Jian. If you are lucky and sign, I'll only charge you 5 yuan. How about?" In the distance, Chen Ping'an's footsteps stopped obviously. The young Taoist priest got up quickly, struck while the iron was hot, and said in a high voice, "In the morning, young man, you are the first guest. I'll just do it to the end. As long as you sit down and draw lots. I can write some yellow paper runes to help you pray for your ancestors and accumulate yin virtue. With my ability, I don't dare to say that I must let people vote for a good baby with great wealth and high price. But I have to say that I'll give you 1 or 2 more blessings. I'll try after all." Chen Ping'an was stunned. Suspiciously, he turned back and sat on the bench in front of the stall. A simple Taoist, a poor boy. 2 poor people, big and small, sat opposite each other. The Taoist smiled, stretched out his hand and motioned the boy to pick up the sign. Chen Ping'an hesitated and suddenly said, "I don't draw lots. You just write a yellow rune for me." "Okay." In Chen Ping'an's memory, it seems that the young Taoist priest who has traveled here has been in the town for at least 5 or 6 years. His appearance has not changed much. He is kind to everyone. He usually helps people look at their faces, calculate divination and draw lots, and occasionally writes family letters on behalf of others. Interestingly, the sign box with 108 bamboo swabs on the desk has been crowded with men in the town for so many years in the female lottery. No one has drawn the upper lot, nor has anyone shaken a lower lot from the sign box, as if there were 108 lots, and there were no bad lots in the lot. So if the people in the town spent 10 yuan just to get a good luck during the New Year's festival, they can accept it. But if they are really upset, no one will be willing to come here as a wrongdoer. If the Taoist is a complete liar, they will wrong others. The town is so big that if they can only pretend to play tricks and cheat, they will have been kicked out long ago. So it's true the skill of a young Taoist is definitely not in the aspects of physiognomy and signature resolution. There are some minor diseases and disasters. Many people can recover quickly after drinking a bowl of Taoist room water, which is quite effective. The young Taoist shook his head and said, I'm a poor man. Children and old people are not deceived that it's agreed to understand, sign and write together and charge you 5 yuan. Chen Ping'an retorted in a low voice, It's 3 yuan. The Taoist laughed and said, In case you draw out and sign, it's 5 yuan. Chen Ping'an made up his mind, reached for the sign box, suddenly looked up and asked, How does the Taoist priest know that I happen to have 5 yuan on me? The Taoist was sitting upright and in danger. I've always been very accurate in judging people's blessings and wealth. Chen Ping'an thought and picked up the sign. The Taoist smiled and said, Young man, don't be nervous. Sometimes there must be something in your life. Don't force it at any time in your life. Looking at ordinary things with an ordinary heart is the first-class all-round method. Chen Ping'an put the sign back on the table, looked solemn and asked, Taoist priest, I'll give you all the 5 yuan money, and I won't draw lots. Just ask Taoist priest to write the yellow paper rune better than usual. You okay? The Taoist smiled as usual, thought a little, nodded and said, Yes. On the desk, the pen, ink and paper had already been prepared. The Taoist carefully asked Chen Ping'an his parents' names, birthplaces, and birthdays. He took out a piece of yellow rune paper and finished it quickly. As for what he wrote, Chen Ping'an was at a loss. He put down his pen and picked up the piece of talisman paper. The young Taoist blew the ink. When he took it home, he stood in the threshold and burned the yellow paper outside the threshold. The boy solemnly took the rune paper and carefully collected it. He didn't forget to put 5 copper coins on the table and bow his thanks. The young Taoist waved to the young man to do his own business. Chen Ping'an ran to deliver the last letter. The Taoist leaned lazily on the chair, glanced at the copper coins, bent down and stretched out his hand to hold them in front of him. At this time, a small and exquisite yellow finch flew to the table from high altitude, pecked the copper coin, soon lost interest and fluttered away. The yellow finch began to hold flowers, and the peach blossoms in your family didn't open. After the Taoist leisurely read this poem, he waved his sleeve gently and sighed. Don't ask for a fault in your life. When he waved his sleeve, 2 bamboo sticks slipped from his sleeves and fell to the ground. The Taoist said ouch, picked them up quickly, and then looked around stealthily. He found that no one was paying attention here for the time being. He was relieved and hid the 2 bamboo sticks in the loose cuffs again. The young Taoist coughed, raised his face and continued to wait for the next guest. He sighed that it was easier to earn women's money. In fact, there are 2 bamboo sticks hidden in the young Taoist's sleeve. One is the top one and the other is the bottom one, both of which are used to make a lot of money, not enough for external humanity. Naturally, the boy didn't know these mysteries. He walked lightly all the way to the village school. The nearby bamboo forest was gloomy and green. Chen Ping'an slowed down, and the mellow voice of a middle-aged man sounded in the house. The sunrise is obsidian, and the lamb fur is like a wet. Then there was a neat and crisp young voice. The sunrise is Yao, and the lamb fur is or you. Chen Ping'an looked up and saw the sun rising in the east. The boy was stunned out when he got back to his mind. The elementary school child was shaking his head. According to his teacher's requirements, he skillfully recited an article. When the sting is awakened, heaven and earth grow, and all things begin to flourish. Lie at night and walk early. Walk widely in the court, and the gentleman walk slowly, so as to achieve ambition. Chen Ping'an stood at the door of the school, trying to stop talking. The middle-aged Confucian scholar with frosty temples turned his head and walked out of the house gently. Chen Ping'an handed out the letter with both hands and respectfully said, "This is Mr. Chen's letter." After the tall man in a green shirt took the envelope, Wen Shang said, "You can come here more when you have nothing to do in the future." Chen Ping'an is a little embarrassed. After all, he may not really have time to come here to listen to this gentleman's teaching. The young man doesn't want to deceive him. The man smiled and said, "It doesn't matter, the truth is all in the book. But being a man is outside the book. Go and be busy." Chen Ping'an breathed a sigh of relief and left after the boy ran far away. He turned his head and looked back. I saw the gentleman standing at the door all the time. His figure bathed in the sun and looked like a god from a distance.